Hi, good morning everyone, and welcome to this session looking at the future of marketing and the trends and challenges ahead. Firstly, thank you everyone for joining us. We've got a fantastic lineup of panelists this morning. During today's session, we encourage you to submit questions throughout the session using the online system. We'll make sure that we endeavour to get to as many of your questions as possible. And we hope you find today's session useful. So I'm now going to ask each of our speakers to very quickly introduce themselves and their role to kick us off. So our first panelist is Patricia Corsi, who's the Chief Marketing and Digital Officer for Bayer. Patricia, could we start with you, please?
Yes, of course. Good morning, everyone. Great to be here with my fellow panelists. So I'm Patricia Corsi. I'm Brazilian. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. I live already in 5 different countries in 2 continents. And the most important things you should know about me are related to my values. I believe in being curious, being grateful, and being brave. And a curious thing about me is that once I've worked with Ozzy Osbourne.
Okay, great. And Johann, could we go to you next, please?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm very jealous, Patricia, for your Ozzy experience. I'm sure it must have been quite a lot of fun. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Johann Evanno. I'm the head of marketing for Ultimate Ears and Jaybird at Logitech. I came from a P&G background, so I worked at P&G for 12 years, and now since about 2 years, I've joined Logitech. And I take care of the Europe and Asia Pacific region.
Okay, great stuff. And Kathryn, should we go next to you, please? Kathryn, sorry, can you hear us, please? Okay, no problem. We'll go to Jess.
Sorry, I was having some issues on the mute button. So yeah, I'm Kathryn Heap. I'm head of digital at Royal Mail. So I have been at Royal Mail for about 6 years. I've worked across CRM, performance marketing, and the latter couple of years I've looked after the website, digital content, user experience, and also media planning and buying for the group.
Okay, perfect. And Igor, how about we go to you next?
Hi everybody, thank you Paul for inviting me today. It's a pleasure really and an honor. I'm originally Italian. I'm currently based in Germany as a role of head of marketing for global home brands in Metro AG. We merely focus on B2B customers. We are present in many countries, 34 with 680 store locations and serving 16 million active customers. Actually, we have a wealth of information from our customers and sharing because they are all having a card, the Metro card. So we are so-called a membership retailer. And so I'm really looking forward to this discussion today. Also, my background is from FMCG. In Coke, I was working as well as in telecommunications. So I'm really looking forward.
Excellent. And last but not least, Jess from Zurich.
Good morning, everyone. So yes, my name's Jess. I work for Zurich Insurance in the UK marketing team. Currently managing our marketing comms for our public sector insurance customers. My background, I used to work at the RBS group, so I worked for the NatWest and RBS brands, and before that I was agency side, predominantly at digital agencies, working across mainly the Disney and PepsiCo brands, but also Tesco, Argos, and a few other brands.
Amazing, thanks a lot, guys. So we've got a couple of quick questions for each speaker, just to sort of get the conversation rolling. But yeah, like I mentioned at the start of the call, if the audience would like to suggest any questions or put any questions to the panelists or on any sort of topic or anything that's been mentioned, please do so in the function on your screen now. So my first question, Patricia, is for you actually. So obviously in the last couple of years, purposeful marketing has emerged as a really important factor for Bayer and your approach to marketing. Could you just run us through one of your most well-known recent campaigns on female health and what impact that great content has had on your marketing?
Yeah, so I think first I want to start with the point that, you know, purposeful brands and bringing the purpose of the brands to life, it's something that I've been doing for a long time. When I was at Unilever, I was working with Dirt is Good in a number of countries, either in Europe or globally. Then I had the opportunity to work in Heineken with some really important campaigns in terms of eradicating women violence, that we got a Cannes Award for that as well. And most recently, what we are doing is that we are bringing with one of our brands that is helping women with their intimate health problems, we are bringing it to life in a very fun and approachable way, so women should not have to face taboos. When we talk about purpose, we need to make sure that, you know, we are not doing it. We have to do this authentically, and it's important that, you know, when we do this authentically, people understand that the brands are bigger than the product, and this is what we are aiming for with the purpose work that we are doing here at Bayer globally. But also we connect with people in a completely different level. We connect with people in a human level. We don't connect with people technically talking about, you know, reasons to believe or benefits like we know technically we speak when we are developing concepts in the office. And obviously we have a side effect to that we inspire and attract talent. The campaign that we have done with Canesten, that is our brand for intimate health in Australia, we launched exclusively on digital channels, and it has been doing so well that actually we did a part 2. So if you haven't seen yet, just go on YouTube and write it down, Trash the Musical, and then drop us a note on what you think about that, on how do you bring the purpose to life in a very fun, engaging way.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend the audience, take a look at that particular campaign. And I took a look yesterday and noticed the comments you guys received were overwhelmingly positive. So it's a really great example of, you know, innovative marketing. Just one more question, actually, Patricia, on that topic. How are you combining consumer centricity with that purposeful marketing?
That's a very good question. Look, I think there is one thing that we need we cannot take from our heads, that is not new, is that the way we connect to people today is very different than before. Before, we had the brands going on one media channel, mostly TV or maybe newspaper and radio, and the brands will tell people what to do. And people would, 100% believe that was what they should do because the brands knew better. We have never been in a situation where the lack of trust in brands have been so big. And one of the things that we know for sure right now, and there is a lot of data behind that, is that people relate to people. And that's why we have the rise of, the influencers, the rise of, the star ratings. So the way we are connecting purpose with, customer journey is to make sure that we connect the thinking, that is the analytics, the data and the insights, with the doing, that is the content, engaging content, fit for purpose content, with the feeling, that is driving engagement, and ultimately with the caring, that is where we drive advocacy. And this is how we are using consumer shopper journey to, in combination with purpose, is in one of the same. So it doesn't feel like it was a plug at the end, and it's one thing that is from the beginning to the end is considered in our consumer shopper journey.
Okay, that's really interesting. I think following on from that topic, Johann, I know Logitech has been doing a lot of work around different types of marketing, and you've gone through a big change in terms of your approach. Could you just run us through, how Logitech have moved to keep up with the times and what those changes have been?
Yeah, sure. So maybe a bit of history. So Logitech was created in 1981 in Switzerland, and very quickly established a second headquarters in the Silicon Valley to be closer to our customers, the big computer manufacturers. For those of you who don't know Logitech, we do mice and keyboards primarily. So for many years, Logitech developed as a mice and keyboards company, and as the computer business kept on expanding, we also benefited from it. However, in the late 2000s, when we started seeing touchscreen device coming, the business started going down because we were very dependent on the mice and keyboards. And of course, when you can use your fingers to type and point, then you don't need mice and keyboards as much as before. So that required a big change in strategy. So we brought in a new leadership team, and we made and the Logitech made two significant changes. The first one is we expanded to other categories where Logitech could have a competitive edge. As an example, as the gaming world, the video games world was expanding rapidly, we created specific products for these users, leveraging, of course, our mice and keyboards expertise, but pushing the performance to the max so that our products would become an integral part of the gamer's performance. We also, for example, launched into the video collaboration category, equipping companies with webcams and phones to improve the video conference experience. That's a B2B business. So the gaming and mice and keyboards is primarily a B2C business, but the video collaboration is B2B. But then as part of this kind of expanding into other categories, there was an underlying principle which I think is very interesting. It's having a mix between what we called trees, plants, and seeds. So the trees are the historical categories where we are already big, like the mice and keyboards. The plants are smaller categories that are growing rapidly that will eventually become trees themselves, like gaming and video collaboration. And seeds are experiments that could bring additional business mid and long term, but that are also more risky. And by having a balance between those three types of categories or businesses, that also allowed us to deliver the business today, but also prepare for the future. So that's kind of the first big change that was made. The second big change was creating a design company. So the principle is that we wanted to create beautiful products that were also highly functional and putting the consumer use at the center of the design. So this led to more ergonomic products, like a vertical mouse, for example, that prevents wrist pain for those of you who use a lot, the mouse on their computer. Same with gaming products, having cool designs, also having products like the video collaboration products that are very intuitive to use. Literally, you can now start a video conference with a product called Tap, where you just push one button and the video conference starts. And I guess some of you may have had some experience on, trying to set up a video conference and spending 10 minutes or 20 minutes calling the IT guys and trying to make things work. So it's really this kind of things that Logitech started putting at the center of how we design the products to really bring the best possible experience to the end user. And it looks like it's been doing it's been working well for us, because the company has been growing very quickly in the last 8 years, while as I said, the touchscreen, the historical business of mice and keyboards has become less big because of the touchscreen market getting bigger and bigger.
Okay, and just before we go into our next panelist, Johann, I know you guys at Logitech have done a really interesting campaign and product launch with the adaptive gaming kit to help disabled people access gaming more easily. Could you just quickly run us through how this came about and what the sort of market reaction to that has been?
Yeah, sure. So maybe let me share some background first. So here we're talking about gaming, so video games, and I guess some of you may have this image in their mind of like a teenager locked in his basement playing video games all day long and pretty much having no friends. And this image has evolved quite a bit in the last few years. So for you to really fully understand what's going on, let me give you a couple of data there. So in 2018, the gaming video games revenues were 3 times higher than the global box office revenues. So all the movies that came out in 2018 in the world, generated 1/3 of what gaming generated in terms of revenues. Like the Star Wars, the Last Jedi, episode, for example, generated 1.3 billion dollars revenues, which is pretty big. But in parallel, the League of Legends, the equivalent of that year, generated 2.1 billion. So gaming is huge. You had like about 200 million viewers of the League of Legends World Championship final in 2018 as well, which is about half of the Football Champions League final. So that just gives you the scale of how big gaming has become. So back to what I was saying before, we design our products starting from consumer, and gamers spend a lot of time playing because it's fun, because they can compete with each other, but also because they can create an alternative version of themselves and design it the way they want. So here we're talking avatars, for example, and anyone who's seen movies like Ready Player One from Steven Spielberg, for example, can see what this means. It's like this kind of alternative reality. However, for you to play video games and make your avatar be what you want, you need to physically push buttons. But when you're disabled, sometimes you cannot push those buttons, and that means that a lot of people cannot do what they want to. And because at Logitech we believe that life is more fun when you play, we set out to create a set of adaptive controllers that can be customized to each individual based on what they can do, and instead of what they can't do. So we partnered with Microsoft for their Xbox consoles and the Abilities Research Center at Mount Sinai Hospital in the US, and we created basically a bunch of switch and button options to empower people. So it's called the Adaptive Gaming Kit, and it's a set of large, small, and light touch buttons and variable trigger controls that users can plug in the way they like, they can plug it to their chairs and so on. So when you see people play and seeing the happiness that that they get when they get lost in the game is priceless, and it levels the playing fields. Imagine this kind of alternative reality that you can have in video games when you're disabled in any way, shape, or form. Being able to really play as well as anyone else in this alternative reality, that makes something huge for them. And then knowing that you can kick ass at gaming as much as anyone else, is a great feeling for people who may have had something in their life that prevented them to do so. So and when working with the Mount Sinai Hospital, they also told us that having fun improves the efficiency of the therapy. So it's actually really important for the neurological recovery. So there is a medical aspect to it that is equally important to us. So that's one example of really starting from the consumer and saying, okay, how can we transform the experience or create an experience that may not be possible otherwise?
No, that's really interesting. It's a great campaign. Again, something that I recommend that the audience checks out. So moving on to yourself, Jess. I mean, you're someone who has a track record really of working across a whole host of different industries. I mean, in your opinion, what sectors do you feel are most adaptable when it comes to innovation?
Sure. So I think there are a few points to cover on this one. I think, industry has a huge bearing when it comes to adaptability for innovation. So, for example, AI has been around for years. It's something that, Google and Facebook have been talking about for ages. They talked, and adopted AI for their core consumer services like 4 years ago. Hospitality, I think if I was going to pick one sector, is arguably one of the first to adopt AI. So I know the Dorchester Hotel was using it to identify which guests, what guests want by using a platform to act as a giant focus group. You had other hotel brands using AI-enabled services to allow guests to check in before getting to their hotel, booking dinner, and other such sort of hotel services. And when I think about innovative brands that I use in my life, I'd say Spotify and Netflix are definitely up there with two of the biggest disruptive brands. So hotels, entertainment have definitely been two sort of key areas. I think going back to the point on AI, so although it's been around for years, it's seen as quite innovative in insurance. We launched a chatbot last year to enable customers to notify Zurich of a claim efficiently, quickly, and we saw great results from it, and it won the Innovative Use of Technology Award, the British Claim Awards. So this was seen as quite cutting edge in insurance, but it's been around for years in other sectors. So I think innovation can mean different things in different sectors. So just sort of following on from that, I think it's also really key to remember that innovation doesn't necessarily just mean new technology. So one way that we're trying to make our customers' lives easier at Zurich is to basically, there's a program called Continuing Professional Development, or CPD, which is essentially specific training that's an obligation for independent financial advisors and other members of our audience at Zurich, that they have to complete a certain number of hours of this training, otherwise they risk getting struck off, essentially. So what we've done is we've taken a regulatory obligation and used it as a way to really engage our audience. So we now produce educational content on various topics on our content hubs, and it counts towards the online trainings that the IFAs, or independent financial advisors, have to carry out. So we're kind of ticking off a few things here. We're helping our audience with their objectives. We get to tell the stories that we want through our content and demonstrate our expertise, and we know that it's going to get some engagement because it counts towards the accreditation. So I think similarly for years, insurance brands have produced content on risk management, fire, flooding, fire prevention, those sorts of sort of typical insurance topics. And recently we've been trialling producing content on more general topics, and we've seen really great results in terms of engagement and page views. So we wrote a piece recently on flexible working because of an initiative that we've introduced at Zurich more recently that's worked really well. So we thought, you know, why don't we speak to our customers about this, seeing as a lot of our audience are different types of organisations, so SMEs, charities, councils, and this is quite new for our market. You know, you wouldn't necessarily expect to go to an insurance brand for content on flexible working, but you might do to read about how to insure your home when you're going on holiday, for example. But we're seeing great results off the back of this. So again, it's another example of how innovation doesn't necessarily need to be new tech. I think another way of looking at innovation is finding ways to adapt to new governance, like GDPR. So another example here at Zurich was we produced several white papers last year alongside our BAU content. And in order to access these white papers, readers had to input their details, so it was gated content. And that was email addresses, job titles, contact preferences, etc. And by building and capturing all this data, it enabled us to gain a better understanding of our audience and also build our subscriber base back up. We've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of downloads on the white papers now, and our fire white paper, which was all about fire prevention and risk management, has even resulted in us running some training for London Fire Brigade, so that was great. But I think, you know, just to bring it back to the question is, you know, innovation can be small things. It doesn't necessarily mean, you know, bringing in and implementing new tech. I think the final 2 points that I just really wanted to make were around the importance of focusing on what the customer issue is. You know, what are you trying to resolve by bringing in this new technology or whatever it might be? how will it help your customers? So there's no point bringing something in for innovation's sake unless it's really solving something. And I think the final point would just be around getting the basics right first. So, for example, are your analytics capabilities joined up across all the platforms in your business? Can you do end-to-end reporting? I think it's about getting the balance right between innovation and wanting to be seen as a really innovative brand and getting the foundations in place before introducing any new technology.
Okay, great. No, I mean, guys, we've already generated quite a lot of questions as well from this, from the initial discussion so far. I've just got one quick question for both Igor and Kathryn. Kathryn, I'll start with you quickly. Obviously, at Royal Mail, you've had a few years of huge changes. Has the experience for your customer changed along with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the customer expectations have changed as much as what we're offering and I guess how we want to interact with customers. So we've gone over, so we privatised around 2013, and there was a sort of lack of investment into the digital ecosystem at the time. And certainly what customers are expecting from us has changed. As it's changed in the market, it's similarly changed in our industry. So yes, there's been a big decline in letters and a big growth in parcels and e-commerce. But actually it's much more than that. It's all of the classic things that people will know about in terms of smartphone use and looking at how people want to interact with us, what times of day they want to interact with us. We've also seen a sort of mix between what was previously business customers and consumers, and actually you've got a sort of hybrid at the minute where a lot of our customers are consumers, but they also run small businesses on the side. And how do we interact with that volume of customers when actually they don't spend enough with us maybe to have an account manager, but we need to have significant interaction with them to keep them using Royal Mail. And certainly also their expectations on data have increased as a lot of specific parcel carriers have got a lot better data tracking on what they do. We've had to invest heavily in all of the data, that not only what we track but also how we present that to customers.
Okay, interesting, and I think that feeds perfectly into the question I was going to ask you, Igor, because obviously Metro have been focusing their strategy on better utilising big data. So give us a bit of background on this, how impacting the customer really, your marketing.
Thank you, Paul. Actually, as you just said, the customers are changing and we are changing with them. In the last year, Metro has been through a major revolution into the so-called big data world. But let me give you first a bit of background. As I mentioned, we operate stores, but also we have food delivery business, e-commerce and marketplace. And overall, our motto can be translated into your success is our business. This is why we are serving B2B customers, mainly in the food business, to say restaurant owners, hotels, caterers. And what we do is really to support them in succeeding their businesses. I mean, and this is the only way to survive, actually. On brand, which is the assortment that I'm taking care, used to be called private labels. Private labels seems something which was to be starting in the 90s, maybe even before, copycat of products. But now we call them own brands because, as Patricia was mentioning, authenticity of the brand is worth more than the product itself. And actually, we are even adding a certain level of innovation into our assortments, whether it's food, articles, or non-food. For us, own brands, it's a strategic ingredient to build customer loyalty and a competitive advantage. Having said so, our customer base is all with membership card, which means we possess a wealth of information that we use to serve them better. Going to your question, big data is for us an holistic approach. And actually, I would summarize it in 4 cornerstones. First of all, master data. So master data for any company that is not, let's say, digitally native, as we used to be at least 10 years ago, there was a process of transformation into getting the right data, availability, and quality, which means master data is the prerequisite before any discussion about big data. To give you the sign of how much master data is important for us, it is in our organization a dedicated department directly reporting to our CEO. And to give the size about our master data, which is embracing customer data, assortment data, and supplier data, we manage, as I mentioned, more than 16 million customer profiles and 50,000 and more own brand product profiles. So we're talking really about big numbers. The second element of our big data strategy is a portfolio of digital products or apps that in most of the cases we develop internally with our sister company Metronome. So to provide 4 examples, one is a key app that we offer actually for free to our B2B customers, which is a website builder. This is an extremely friendly solution for website design, and currently we have more than 170 customers using it. The second app that we offer them is the reservation tool, and since the last year launch, we were able to reserve more than 1 million seats, of course, in our customer premises. Again, we're talking about restaurants and food business entrepreneurs. The third app that we offer them is the menu kit. This is an app that allows a chef or a restaurant owner actually to engineer his menu, defining recipes, analyze them, verifying also food cost and profitability. And then the last one, which is entering more into the economical part of restaurant management, is called the Gastro Cockpit, which allows restaurant business management to streamline, let's say, core operations, staff and goods cost, profitability, and sales KPIs. So all of these, let's say, only the 4 apps that I described to you are an additional source for us of very valuable data, which is, of course, dynamic. And we actually, most of the cases, we use this to serve better our customers. As I mentioned, for menu engineering purposes, for improve their business performance, or to give them customized offers. The third element of our big data strategy is data intelligence. So to simplify it, we have a team of data scientists that are designing algorithms. How do we leverage on this? Mainly, we use this data intelligence for personalization and relevance in predictions and suggestions for our customers. To give some examples, we can give predictions on newly launched products or complementary products for their specific needs. We provide also recommendations for try and switch of our own brand products versus competitors' products. But what we are most proud of, for example, is the capability actually to support them with a sort of consulting approach also in their restaurant business. Consider, for example, a restaurant owner or a manager which is using the cockpit that we provide. She or he can leverage on very solid local and international statistical data, providing better restaurant performances. For example, regarding the staff planning, the selection of items on the menu, pricing and markups decision. Then the last element of our big data strategy is actually a resilient, scalable infrastructure. For this, we partner with a major cloud service provider. So we are in the cloud, yes. Actually, the provider is also the biggest search engine in the world, not to give names. And this allowed us, first of all, to reduce infrastructure cost by 30%. And also, we were able not only to increase the storage space, which in most of cases people think it's about the cloud, but actually it's about having analytical power available on demand. For example, for calculating product recommendation for customers, this requires a lot of CPU. So in a nutshell, this is our strategy. Big data, 4 cornerstones. First of all, master data, then a compelling portfolio of apps, third, data intelligence, and fourth, a resilient and scalable infrastructure. I hope that I could give a clear idea, but I'm, of course, available for further questions.
No, that's fantastic, Igor. And I actually just want to switch up to a couple of our audience questions now. So I've got the first question from Darren Evans, who I think this question might be perfect for Patricia and Johann, possibly. So the question is, given that many brands are now marketing their services based on purpose-driven initiatives, do you believe that we'll see the emergence of joint marketing efforts between many companies that share a common goal? Patricia, or did you want to take the lead on that question?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I know hope is not a strategy, but I really hope so. I think one of the things that we have seen, I think we are in an area that is in constant change. But one of the things that we have seen that has changed dramatically in terms of the absolute belief is that before, a couple of years ago, people thought that the way to leadership is to do everything by yourself. Even in terms of the, supply chain, you go from, end to end, you do it all by yourself. And what we see more and more and more is this rise of this economy where everything is done in partnership. If you look at the top biggest brands growing in the US or even in Asia, they actually do not have any of the supply chain system that most of the, I'm going to call traditional companies, deem mandatory in the past. So this is, mostly from an operation point of view. So I hope that companies start partnering in this sense and partnering with a very clear focus that is, what are we going to do together better that will serve our consumers, our communities, and our planet? So when these companies start partnering better from an end-to-end point of view, because there will be financial benefits, there will be benefits for the society, for sure they're going to start interacting more and understand the roots of the companies. I think it's very difficult for someone to do authentically saying, my purpose is to improve health, for example, and then you partner within the same industry with someone that is improving health, when from a product and category point of view would be a competition, let me say in this way. But we could partner with other people that are, going towards the same goal. So I think the way that I would love to see companies doing this in the future authentically is using the Sustainable Development Goals, because I think there are unique opportunity for us in a fantastic moment in time to do a big and effective positive mark on the world. So instead of looking specific of the literal purpose, we look, for example, on Sustainable Development Goal number 2 or number 3, we are sharing the Sustainable Development Goal. Why don't we think about the things that we can do together to improve our consumers, our customers, and our society? Again, hope is not a strategy, but my wish is that we see this more. And what I can tell you is in my current job, but on my former jobs also in Heineken and Unilever, we used to do that a lot.
Okay, Johann, would you agree with that? Would you agree with that point?
273%. I think, and by the way, Patricia, your quote of "hope is not a strategy" is also the one that I use quite a bit. I would say, to me, there are 2 elements. One, from a consumer point of view, we're now talking about tribes. So groups of people, they're not necessarily defined by demographics or data, but more like by their behaviors, their preferences, their affinities between each other. And for those tribes, they have actually a set of brands that are meaningful and relevant to them. So that would make sense for them to, get, for those brands to partner, to talk to the same tribe. But as Patricia said, we have to do it in a very authentic way. And that links back to the purpose that you were mentioning, Patricia. It's like people see through when we do that with a very like commercial, intention. When we do that because we really want to give or to connect with a given tribe, to give them something better for themselves, and we do it in an authentic and kind of value-adding way for them, then the partnership makes sense. Very often, and still today, everyone talks about purpose, but a lot of time we see the purpose being like the makeup on a big commercial deal, and this has to change. First, for us all as citizens, as well as the way consumers see that, and then they see it. So if we do something that is really deeply ingrained into a common set of values and purposes between two brands, by all means, and a common also target or tribe audience, then by all means we should join forces, so that, by the way, it costs less for everyone, but also it's more efficient for the planet and so on. So we have to do that. It is more difficult to find many brands with the same set of values and audiences and so on, but we just have to look for it. It's a bit more difficult, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Okay, no, that's fascinating, and I have another question from Douglas Horn, which I think would be most relevant for Kathryn and Jessica, considering the work you guys have been doing with different technologies. So Douglas Horn's question is, what does each speaker think will be the biggest trend to make an impact in marketing within the next 5 years? Kathryn, I know you guys at Royal Mail have been doing a lot of work with chatbots, and what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the trend is probably more the instant, the requirement, I think, for people to have instant responses to their queries about things, and that actually the way people research how they're going to buy products is very much, they want to be able to self-serve that. And whether that's through where we've seen reviews obviously growing massively as a way that people look at how they're going to buy, they also want to be able to answer their questions instantly. And I think how brands can respond to that, maybe through a chatbot style scenario, maybe the way that you photograph products in a retail sense, offering a 360 view of things, or just more depth of content, so that depending whatever people want to know about, how you kind of provide that interactive content, but actually potentially also physically and digitally. So there has been a big trend as well as of people wanting to go and physically see products in stores, and or for us, I mean, it would be the transaction between, you could potentially buy your postage online with us, but then actually you need to physically go and drop it off somewhere. So how do we dovetail that digital experience into a seamless physical experience? So I think it's probably more matching up with those expectations, and that a lot of the disruptors in the market are doing incredible things in the UX space, and actually the better that the experience becomes in a lot of other areas of people's lives, the greater the expectation is that that all brands will be able to match that.
Okay, fantastic. And Jess, what would your opinion be on that previous question?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Kathryn. I think for me, AI is the most exciting sort of piece of tech that's coming out or is already out. So I remember the L'Oreal chief digital officer said a couple of years back that AI is going to be as big a revolution as the internet, and I kind of think it, I agree, it's got so much potential, and I think it's just, coming back to the customer need again. A lot of it will be sort of built on trust. So in the insurance example, the chatbot that I mentioned earlier. So we had to sort of ask questions around, are our audience ready to purchase or transact via a chatbot? Or is it more about raising questions, logging a new claim? Like, is the trust there with this technology yet? So in our particular example where we implemented this and it resonated well with customers, is where we needed to process claims more quickly. We weren't acting on them quickly enough. And we needed to be a point of contact more quickly as well. So again, we really boiled down to where the issue lay, and I think it's also about exercising caution when it comes to AI. So we launched a chatbot last year, which I mentioned previously, and the issue that we were trying to resolve with the chatbot was that customers could only report claims within office hours previously, and this was hugely impacting our operational costs and also obviously customers' time while they waited to hear back on the process and progress of the claim. So the objective of the chatbot was to allow customers to notify Zurich of the claim more quickly and to allow us to process claims within 24 hours. And we trialled the chatbot with, I think it was non-emergency home and motor customers, when they were first logging notification of a claim, and it allowed them to do so at a time that suited them, and also allowed us to process the claim within 3 working hours rather than the previous target of 24. And we have something like 35% of claims requests processed through this chatbot, and it resulted in a 30% time saving overall. So I think it's really just about, again, looking at the customer needs and how AI can really help you with a seamless customer journey.
I mean, if I may, the other thing I would just add is also being in the channel that the customer's in. So if the customer wants to interact on live chat or through a chatbot and 24 hours a day, that's what they want to do. But equally, needing to have the ability to be where the customer is. So if, for example, they're using voice search, because that's where we're going in a lot of aspects, then actually having the right results for them, depending what they're searching on, is really important. But obviously, how you optimize for a written search is different to voice search, and actually being mindful of all of the different channels when you're implementing anything new, of where customers might be when they're looking for that.
Okay, and Igor, do you have anything to add to that question before we move on?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, coming through loud and clear, Igor.
Yes, okay, I'm muted. So it's about the customer journey. Clearly, out there are many technologies. I would rather be a bit challenging, saying that most, or in some cases, these technologies are trying to get bigger space than necessary for the actual customer everyday life. So the risk is actually to force something that maybe doesn't change the customer journey in a meaningful way. So again, I'm challenging here, huh? But what we should find always with our customers is the human touch, which means, yes, there are technology, but as much maybe the customer as the perception of this technology as should work in the background and to provide service, which means if we consider a customer journey, which of course is usually integrated and multi-channel, to make it seamless and engaging, it should provide not to the customer real value, which means time, value back, knowledge, experiences, rather than asking the customer to do something or to interact with some machine, for example. And definitely not being overwhelming. Many cases we tested just the pure navigation on some website, popping up the famous boot chat, no? Do we want it? Maybe not. Maybe it's a bit overwhelming. So of course, this technology has to be available when needed. I mean, this is my point of view.
Okay, no, that's really interesting. That's a great perspective on the trends that we can probably foresee in the next 5 years or so. I have a question for Patricia actually. Just one very quick question at the start, and then a second sort of follow-up question. So a question from the audience is: will sales and marketing become one? Will they combine? Do you think?
Sales and marketing.
Yes. Do you think those two departments will eventually merge into one?
Well, it's a good question. Let's hope no, because I think there are a couple of things that when we see marketing evolving, I would much rather. It's getting more complicated. And I think it's really important that we get people to be at their best, in doing the things that they can do to focus on the consumer and to focus on the customer. So when we think about, for example, e-commerce, I think there is a big blurred line. When we think about DTC, direct to consumer, again, there is a bit blurred line, but I don't think we are going to have a significant shift from bricks and mortars into e-commerce and DTC globally. I'm not talking specific regions like APAC, that will change that dramatically. I think the way to do sales has changed a lot. Is much more professionalized if I compare on how it was done in Latin America 2 decades ago. And I think the role of the salesperson is becoming more and more critical in terms of using data and analytics. And this is something that it has in common with marketing. So I think the commonalities are getting closer and closer. But if they are going to merge, I think probably we have another good decade in front of us before we start having that. But maybe there are people already in the panel doing that. But I again, I hope it does not, because I think there is very beautiful things about the art of doing marketing and being focused on the consumer, and the art of really serving the customer as the boss. And those two areas have to be very well integrated and very well connected. So I would much rather say my strategy is to make sure sales and marketing collaborate much further and much stronger than it was in the past, than to say that they're going to be fused.
No problem. Okay, very good. So I think we've got time just for one last question, which I'll put to the whole panel, and just a very quick answer from each speaker I think should be sufficient on this. So Sandeep has got a question saying that obviously it's a cliched fact that retaining customers is more profitable than acquiring new ones. Could each speaker just quickly sum up how would you reduce customer defections as from a marketer's perspective? Should we start with you, Patricia, and then we'll work through.
I don't think it's straightforward, this one, because it all depends on your level of penetration and the size of your current business. So if you have already a massive base of existing consumers, I think being attracted to bring new consumers and not focusing on your core, there is a lot of data out there that says that this doesn't account for success. But if you're a new entrant, if you're a challenger, you have everything to gain just to keep focusing on attracting talent. The cost of acquisition is something that is extremely important to be taken into account, because some of those new business, they have really interesting ideas, really delivering against consumer unmet needs and customer unmet needs. But without a business case, without a financial business case that works with the acquisition cost that they have. So I think looking at the whole system in terms of the number of what is your target in terms of consumers that you currently have versus the one you want to have, making sure you have a very exciting and attracting and engaging pipeline to keep the consumers that you have. They have been very loyal to you, they love your brand and your categories. It's your obligation to keep them with you with great innovation. But looking outside, I don't think it's flirting in this sense, trying to get new consumers. I think it has also to put a lot of science in there to understand the cost of acquisition, and not just saying, you know, the grass is greener on the other side. Let's just acquire as much consumers as we can.
Brilliant. And Johann, what do you think? How are you working to retain customers?
Yeah, so I think now we have a lot more tools than we used to on managing the existing user base, whether it's CRM programs, direct to consumers. So there are many things that we can do in the digital world to do that. But for me, it comes down to the purpose of the brand. So the purpose of the brand, the brand should still be relevant to whomever is using us today, while still becoming relevant to more and more people. But it's not one or the other, because it's always easy to say the grass is greener, on the next, garden, and get focused on, this new shiny object that I don't have. But usually what we see is that we lose much more business from the from the existing user base than we gain with adding new people. Yes, that is still, Patricia's point on the penetration is still right. But what I mean is, it goes much faster to lose people from your existing base if you have a big enough base than it is to gain people. So for me, it's really about making sure that you stay relevant to people who bought you today, and there is still some good business to do with those people, trading them up, increasing equipment rates, giving them more products from the same brand. If they're already with you, they should be more likely to buy more products from you. But it's really about making sure we have the right balance. It's like when we have new product launches versus base business. A lot of companies spend a ton of money and time and effort in launching new products, and when you look at the incrementality of these new products, that's usually pretty small. Here I'm talking the consumer product world, and that's the bit that, again, we need to be careful about, not to go too much in one way or another.
Okay, well, guys, I mean, so I think that's actually taking us to the full hour now of the webinar. So we're going to have to wrap up the session now. But I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all of our wonderful panelists this morning, who provided us with numerous fantastic insights and talking points, which I hope the audience are able to fashion into actionable takeaways and actually implement into your own marketing strategies. So just before we finish this, so obviously this webinar is run in partnership with the Brand Marketing Summit by Reuters Events. This June, we're bringing together over 200 senior marketing leaders together to discuss some of the issues that we're discussing today, and more of the key issues that are affecting the wider industry as marketers. So I hope you're able to join us there and for future sessions and carry on this ever-evolving discussion. Thanks a lot for joining us today, guys.
Thank you, Paul. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.